Imagine this. Your body is still, but your mind won't shut up. You're lying in bed, the room is dark, and yet your thoughts are louder than a stadium. Every regret, every fear, every what if starts to circle like vultures. You tell yourself to stop thinking, but the more you fight, the more your mind pulls you in. You replay conversations that ended hours ago. You analyze every word you said. You predict disasters that haven't even happened. And somewhere between the overthinking and the exhaustion, you start to wonder, who's really in control here? Me or my mind? Most people spend their entire lives inside that noise. They wake up anxious, go to sleep drained, and call it normal. They think too much, feel too little, and act almost never. And when you ask them why, they'll say they're just trying to figure things out. But what they're really doing is drowning in their own thoughts. The mind can be your most powerful ally or your worst enemy. It can build empires or destroy peace. The difference? Control. The truth is, you don't need to silence the world. You need to silence yourself, because the world outside is rarely the problem. It's the echo chamber in your head that's keeping you stuck. The constant chatter that tells you you're not enough, that you'll fail, that you should have done more, been more, achieved more. That voice that never lets you rest. That's the enemy you have to confront. There's a kind of freedom that most people will never taste. The freedom that comes when your mind obeys you. When your thoughts no longer dictate your emotions. When you can walk through chaos and still feel calm. When you can sit in silence and not crave distraction. That's real power. And maybe, right now, you think it's impossible. You think your thoughts are too loud, too relentless, too deeply rooted. But here's the truth. Your mind isn't wild, it's just untrained. You fed it fear, doubt, and noise for so long that it forgot how to be quiet. But you can take back control. You can train it to serve you again. Because peace isn't found by escaping your thoughts. It's found by mastering them. So let's go there. Let's step into the battlefield of your mind. Let's face the noise, the chatter, the overthinking, and silence it once and for all. Not with force, not with denial, but with awareness, discipline, and power. Because when you learn to command your mind, you become unstoppable. And that's where everything changes. Overthinking is like quicksand. You don't realize you're sinking until it's already too late. It starts small. You replay a mistake, a word, a moment. You tell yourself you're just reflecting, trying to understand, trying to learn, but reflection turns into rumination, and before you know it, you've built an entire world out of what ifs and should haves. You start to believe that if you can think about something long enough, you'll somehow control the outcome. But control is the illusion that overthinking sells you. It promises safety and delivers anxiety. It pretends to protect you from pain, but it ends up keeping you trapped inside it. The truth is, your mind can become your most sophisticated form of self-sabotage. It convinces you that constant analysis is intelligence, that worrying is preparation, that imagining every possible scenario somehow means you'll be ready for anything. But life doesn't reward those who think the most. It rewards those who move the most. And while you're busy running laps inside your own mind, life keeps happening without your permission and without your participation. Overthinking creates the illusion of progress. You sit for hours planning, predicting, preparing. You rewrite the same idea in your head 100 different ways, never realizing that the act of thinking has become the comfort zone. It gives you the feeling of doing something, while doing nothing at all. It keeps you safe from failure, because you never take the risk to act. But safety and stagnation often look the same. And if you're not careful, you start mistaking mental activity for real growth. The most dangerous part is how normal it feels. Everyone overthinks, right? We scroll, we compare, we analyze every decision, every text, every silence. We live in an age of endless input, information, everywhere, clarity nowhere. The world trains us to keep our minds busy, to fill every quiet moment with something: music, screens, voices, Silence becomes uncomfortable, almost threatening. Because when it's quiet, you're forced to listen. You start hearing the thoughts you've been trying to outrun, the ones that tell you the truth, the ones that hurt. Overthinking feeds on fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of loss. It's your mind's way of trying to build walls around your vulnerability. If you can predict what might go wrong, maybe you can stop it from happening. But the irony is, the more you try to protect yourself through thought, the more you close yourself off from life. You start living in defense mode, always reacting, never creating. You can't move forward when both your hands are gripping the past, and your mind is busy rehearsing the future. There's also pride in overthinking, a strange kind of ego. You tell yourself you're being careful, cautious, responsible. You think deeply because you care, but sometimes it's not care, it's fear, dressed as control. You don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to be wrong. So you keep thinking, rethinking, and then rethinking the rethinking. And while you do, the moment passes, opportunities fade, people move on, and all you're left with are scenarios that never existed outside your imagination. Overthinking is mental noise that sounds like logic. It pretends to be productive. It disguises itself as preparation, but underneath it all is the same emotion. Fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being judged. Fear of losing what you can't control. The mind uses thought as a shield, but that shield also becomes a cage. It locks you inside your own uncertainty. You start to mistrust yourself, to second-guess every instinct. You look for validation from others, because you no longer trust your own decision-making. And when you don't trust yourself, peace becomes impossible. You can't think your way into peace. You can't analyze your way into confidence. Because peace doesn't come from answers. It comes from acceptance. It comes from saying, I don't need to know everything right now. I don't need to control what's not mine to control. The moment you stop fighting your thoughts is the moment you start observing them. And that shift from being lost in your thoughts to watching them pass through you is where true power begins. Imagine your mind as a room. For years you've left every door open, noise pouring in from every direction. Opinions, regrets, fears, assumptions, all shouting over each other. Overthinking is standing in that room, trying to make sense of the chaos. But awareness is walking to the door and quietly closing it, one by one. It doesn't mean you stop thinking. It means you stop being controlled by your thoughts. You decide what deserves space in that room and what doesn't. When you're trapped in overthinking, your energy leaks. You lose focus, confidence, and clarity. You hesitate where you should act. You question where you should trust. And every small decision becomes a war inside your head. That's not intelligence. That's imprisonment. Because the real measure of a strong mind isn't how much it can think. It's how well it can stay still. A sharp blade is useless if it never strikes. A powerful engine is wasted if it never moves. You were not meant to live inside your head. You were meant to experience life, to take risks, to fail, to learn, to adapt. Thinking is a tool, not a home. The moment you understand that, you start to reclaim your power. Because peace isn't found by eliminating thought. It's found by mastering it. The thoughts will still come, but they'll no longer dictate your emotions. The noise will still exist, but it won't shake your center. Overthinking is not your nature. It's your habit. And like any habit, it can be broken. The first step is realizing that your mind is not you. It's a voice, a tool, a storm that you can learn to calm. When you stop identifying with every thought that enters your mind, you start to see them for what they are. Just passing clouds. You can choose which ones you follow and which ones you let drift away. The prison of overthinking doesn't need walls to keep you locked in. It just needs your attention. Every time you feed it, it grows stronger. Every time you challenge it, it starts to weaken. You don't fight overthinking by thinking harder. You defeat it by becoming silent enough to hear what's real beneath it. Because beneath the noise, beneath the doubt, there's always something still, something wise, calm, and steady. That's you, the real you. And once you learn to stand in that silence without needing to fill it, you've already broken free from the prison your mind built for you. You're no longer the prisoner. You're the observer. You're the master. You finally realize the mind was never the enemy. It was only waiting for someone strong enough to take command. Awareness is the turning point, the exact moment where chaos begins to lose its grip. Most people live their entire lives unaware that their mind is controlling them. They react, they worry, they spiral, and they call it thinking. But awareness is when you finally take a step back and say, wait, I'm not my thoughts. I'm the one watching them. That single realization is where mastery begins. Because the truth is, you can't change what you don't first recognize. You can't command what you haven't observed. Awareness is not about stopping your mind. It's about seeing it clearly, without judgment, without panic, without running away from it. Think about how most people operate. Something happens, and immediately their mind takes over, creating stories, predicting outcomes, assigning meaning. You text someone, and they don't reply. Within minutes, your brain starts spinning a web of conclusions. They're ignoring me. I said something wrong. They don't care. The mind creates an entire narrative from a single event. And if you don't have awareness, you believe it. You take those thoughts as truth instead of what they are, temporary noise. Awareness gives you distance. It allows you to see that a thought is just a thought, not a fact. The reason awareness feels so foreign is because it requires stillness, and stillness feels unnatural in a world built on noise. We've been conditioned to react instantly, to fill every silence with a sound, every pause with a distraction. But awareness asks for the opposite. It asks you to slow down, to breathe, to watch without jumping to conclusions. It's not passive, it's powerful, because the ability to observe without reacting is the first sign of inner strength. Anyone can explode, panic, or overanalyze. It takes a trained mind to stay centered while the storm rages inside. Awareness is not about control. It's about clarity. When you start observing your thoughts, you'll be shocked by how many of them are repetitive, useless, or rooted in fear. You'll see how your mind replays the same worries in different disguises. How it loves drama, how it thrives on problems to solve, even when none exist. Awareness exposes the tricks of your mind. It's like turning on the light in a room that's been dark for years. You suddenly see what's been hiding in the corners. The dust, the clutter, the patterns, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. The first challenge of awareness is discomfort. The mind doesn't like to be watched. It's used to running the show, unchallenged. When you start paying attention, it fights back. It tries to pull you into stories, to make you react, to drag you back into the noise. That's normal. You'll feel restless. You'll want to check your phone, open a tab, distract yourself. But that's the test. Awareness isn't built in moments of peace. It's forged in the moments you resist the urge to escape. In awareness, you begin to notice not just what you think, but why you think it. You start tracing your thoughts back to their roots. Your insecurities, your fears, your conditioning. You realize that many of your thoughts aren't even yours. They're echoes of what other people told you to believe. You see how your mind constantly seeks validation, how it fears rejection, how it replays pain to protect you from feeling it again. Awareness reveals that your thoughts are not personal. They're habitual. And the moment you see that, you gain freedom. Most people think they need to fix their mind, but you can't fix what isn't broken. The mind's job is to think. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is identification. You've confused yourself with the voice in your head. You've forgotten that you're the listener, not the speaker. Awareness separates the two. It reminds you that you are the observer of thought, not its victim. You don't need to stop thinking. You need to stop believing every thought you have. When awareness becomes your default state, your reactions change. You stop taking things so personally. Someone criticizes you, and instead of spiraling, you notice your body tighten, your chest contract, your ego flare, and you breathe. You recognize the reaction before it controls you. That moment of pause is everything. It's the gap between stimulus and response, the space where choice lives. Without awareness, you react impulsively. With awareness, you respond intentionally. That's the difference between chaos and composure, between emotion-driven and purpose-driven living. It's not that awareness makes life easier. It makes you stronger. Because now you see the game your mind plays, and you no longer fall for it. You can hear the voice that says, "You're not enough," and respond with, "I see you, but you're not in charge anymore." You can feel fear rise and still move forward. You can feel doubt whisper and still take the step. Awareness doesn't remove the noise, it removes its power over you. Over time, awareness turns into mastery. You begin to feel the subtle shift between thought and truth. You realize that peace isn't the absence of thought, it's the space between them. That stillness is not emptiness, it's presence. You become comfortable with silence because you no longer fear it. You stop needing constant stimulation to feel alive. The chatter in your head becomes background noise, like a radio playing in another room. You hear it, but it doesn't own your focus anymore. When awareness deepens, even pain changes. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" You begin to witness emotions instead of being consumed by them. Anger, sadness, jealousy, they pass through you, but they no longer define you. You can stand in the middle of your own chaos and remain still. That's not indifference, that's mastery. Because awareness transforms pain into wisdom, confusion into clarity, and fear into strength. The beauty of awareness is that it doesn't require perfection. You don't need to be calm all the time. You just need to notice when you're not. You don't need to silence your thoughts, you just need to see them clearly. Awareness is a daily practice, not a final destination. It's choosing moment after moment to wake up, to stop being lost in the noise, and start seeing what's real. Every time you catch yourself lost in thought and bring your attention back, you're training your mind. You're strengthening that muscle of presence. It might feel small, but those moments build over time. They rewire your brain, reshape your identity, and restore your control. Because awareness isn't about escaping the mind. It's about learning to walk through it with your eyes open. When you live with awareness, you no longer drown in the waves of thought. You learn to surf them. You become the calm in the storm, the observer behind the noise. And that's when you realize peace was never missing. It was just buried beneath layers of distraction and fear. You just needed to look close enough to find it. That's the power of awareness. It's not loud. It doesn't shout. It's quiet, sharp, and unshakable. It's the foundation of all mental strength. Because when you finally see your mind clearly, it can no longer control you. You control it. And from that moment on, life changes. You stop surviving your thoughts, and you start commanding them. Discipline is the bridge between awareness and mastery. Awareness opens your eyes to the chaos inside you, but discipline gives you the strength to command it. Because once you see the noise, once you hear how loud your mind can get, you realize that knowing about it isn't enough. You can understand your thoughts all day long, but without discipline, you'll still be dragged around by them. Awareness is understanding the storm. Discipline is learning how to walk through it without losing your ground. Most people think discipline means control, restriction, or self-punishment. But real discipline isn't about forcing yourself. It's about freeing yourself. It's the act of creating structure so your energy flows where it matters, instead of scattering in 1,000 directions. Without discipline, your mind becomes a wild animal, reactive, restless, unpredictable. With it, that same mind becomes a weapon, sharp, calm, and deliberate. Discipline turns chaos into focus. It teaches your thoughts to obey you, not the other way around. Think about how easily your mind runs away with you. One small worry, one careless comment, one delay, and your brain starts spinning stories. You know you're doing it, but you can't stop. That's because awareness without discipline is like seeing fire and still walking into it. You can recognize your patterns, but unless you train yourself to interrupt them, they'll keep running your life. Discipline is the muscle that lets you say, no, not this time, not today. But here's the truth. Discipline is not built in moments of comfort. It's born in friction. Every time you resist the urge to react, you're building it. Every time you sit in silence when your mind screams for distraction, you're building it. Every time you keep your word to yourself, even when it's inconvenient, you're building it. Discipline is not a single act. It's 1,000 quiet decisions that nobody sees. It's you choosing focus over noise, clarity over comfort, purpose over impulse. The world doesn't train us for discipline. It trains us for indulgence. Instant gratification is everywhere. Scroll, click, escape. The mind gets addicted to stimulation because it's easier than stillness. Stillness requires confrontation. When you sit in silence, the mind has no escape. It faces its own restlessness, its insecurities, its fears. Discipline is choosing to face that instead of running. It's choosing the harder path because you understand that peace isn't free, it's earned. When you begin practicing discipline, you'll feel resistance. Your mind will fight back. It will tempt you with excuses, with comfort, with the illusion that just one more time doesn't matter. It'll tell you that you deserve a break, that you've done enough. But that's not kindness. It's sabotage disguised as self-care. True care for yourself is building the kind of mind that doesn't collapse every time life gets difficult. Discipline gives you that strength. It's not punishment, it's preparation. There's a reason military training breaks people down before building them up. It's not cruelty, it's conditioning. They're teaching you to act with clarity under chaos, to remain steady under stress. You're not being trained to fight others. You're being trained to fight your own weakness. That's what mental discipline does. It rewires your responses. It takes you from emotional reaction to emotional regulation, from being driven by thought to directing it. That's why discipline isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's doing the right thing long after the feeling of motivation has faded. People often say they lack motivation, but motivation is fleeting. It's emotional. Discipline doesn't need to feel good to work. Discipline shows up when motivation doesn't. It's the decision to act even when your mind screams not to. It's getting up when you'd rather stay down. It's focusing when you'd rather drift. It's doing the hard things simply because you said you would. That's how you start taming your thoughts, through repetition, through integrity, through action. When you live with discipline, you stop negotiating with your emotions. You stop asking yourself, do I feel like it? You do it because it's necessary, not because it's convenient. You train your mind to follow through instead of fleeing. The more you practice this, the more your brain learns that it can't control you with fear or laziness. Every small act of follow-through, waking up early, finishing what you start, staying silent instead of reacting, reprograms your mind to obey. You're not suppressing it. You're reconditioning it. Discipline also demands boundaries. Not just with others, but with yourself. The moment you decide what you will and will not allow in your mental space, you start reclaiming your power. You learn to walk away from conversations that drain you, habits that weaken you, and thoughts that poison you. You stop feeding your mind junk, negative media, toxic people, endless comparison. Because discipline isn't only about what you do, it's about what you refuse to tolerate. In silence, discipline shows its true face. When you sit in meditation or solitude or simple stillness, the undisciplined mind tries to fill the space. It wants to wander, to plan, to replay, to escape. That's when you practice. That's when you hold your focus. You breathe, you observe, you return again and again. Some days it'll feel impossible, but every return is victory. Every second of presence is progress. Over time, your mind learns obedience, not through force, but through repetition. It learns to stay still when you tell it to. That is power. A disciplined mind doesn't mean you never feel anger, doubt, or fear. It means those emotions no longer hijack you. You see them arise, acknowledge them, and act from strength, not reaction. Discipline gives you that control to pause before you speak, to breathe before you judge, to think before you act. It's not about suppression, it's about direction. It's using energy wisely instead of wasting it on chaos. If awareness is seeing the fire, discipline is learning to contain it, to use it for warmth, not destruction. The mind is a force of nature. You can't kill it, but you can train it. Through small acts of daily consistency, you shape it into something powerful, something steady. The more disciplined you become, the quieter your mind grows. Not because it has no thoughts, but because it no longer fears them. There will be days you'll want to give up. Days when your thoughts will feel too heavy to manage. When silence feels unbearable. But remember, discipline doesn't care about the day. It only cares about direction. The question isn't how do I feel right now? It's who am I becoming by doing this? That's how discipline transforms you. It doesn't just change your habits, it reshapes your identity. You start to see yourself as someone who follows through. Someone who can be trusted, someone who commands their own mind. And that's the moment overthinking begins to die. Because the mind can't bully someone who follows through. It can't manipulate someone who knows they're stronger than their thoughts. When you're disciplined, you stop reacting to every wave and start steering the ship. You stop being the passenger and become the captain. The weapon that tames thought is not willpower. It's consistency. The more disciplined your actions, the calmer your mind becomes. Because a disciplined life silences chaos. It doesn't silence by suppression. It silences by strength. The stronger your discipline, the softer your inner noise. Because the mind only screams when it knows you're listening. Once it learns you command the space, it quiets down. It follows your lead. That's the power of discipline. It's not glamorous, it's not loud. It's quiet, relentless, and transformative. It's the armor that protects you from your own mind. The structure that turns noise into clarity. When you live with discipline, your thoughts stop controlling you. Because you finally become the one giving the orders. Detachment is misunderstood. Most people hear that word and think it means apathy, coldness, indifference, not caring about anything. But true detachment isn't about disconnecting from life. It's about being fully present in it without being controlled by it. It's the art of standing in the middle of chaos and not letting it own you. It's loving deeply without losing yourself, working hard without needing validation, showing up fully without clinging to the outcome. Detachment is freedom not from responsibility, but from obsession. The need to control everything is the silent disease of the modern mind. We want to control what people think of us, how life unfolds, how the future turns out. We overthink, plan, predict, and manipulate every detail, believing that control equals safety. But control is an illusion. The more you chase it, the less peace you have. You can control your effort, your energy, your attitude, but never the outcome. The world moves on its own rhythm, and the moment you try to force it, you start suffering. Control is rooted in fear, fear of uncertainty, fear of loss, fear of being powerless. The mind craves certainty because it believes that if it can predict everything, it can prevent pain. But life doesn't work that way. You can't plan peace, you can't schedule happiness, you can't script destiny. You can only meet each moment with presence and strength. Detachment is what allows you to do that, to stop fighting the uncontrollable and start flowing with it. When you're attached to outcomes, you suffer twice. First, when things don't go your way, and again when you punish yourself for it. You believe that failure means you're not good enough. That rejection means you're unworthy. That loss means you've done something wrong. But life isn't personal. It's fluid. It's not always fair, and it doesn't always make sense. Detachment is the moment you stop taking it personally. You stop saying, "Why me?" and start saying, "Let's see what this is trying to teach me." This doesn't mean giving up. Detachment isn't laziness. It's power. Because when you detach from outcomes, you give your full energy to the process. You focus on what you can control. Your effort, your attitude, your character. You stop wasting energy on the parts you can't control. The approval, the timing, the result. You work with intensity, but without desperation. You love without possession. You act without fear. You care deeply, but you hold lightly. That's the balance. The mind's addiction to control is also an addiction to fear. It constantly imagines the worst-case scenario, then tries to manage it before it even exists. It's like holding your breath waiting for something bad to happen. And when it doesn't, you exhale only to start the cycle again. Detachment breaks that loop. It reminds you that control is a false comfort. You don't need to know what's next to be okay. You just need to trust yourself enough to handle it when it comes. To practice detachment, you must first become aware of your attachments. The things you cling to for a sense of worth or safety. Maybe it's people. Maybe it's achievements. Maybe it's an identity you've built around being successful, attractive, needed, or respected. The danger isn't in wanting those things. It's in needing them to feel whole. Because anything you need to feel complete has power over you. Detachment is reclaiming that power. It's saying, I can appreciate this, but I don't depend on it to define me. You'll know you're practicing detachment when you can face uncertainty without panic. When you can hear no without collapsing. When you can love someone fully but still walk away when your peace costs too much. That's strength. Detachment doesn't close your heart. It stabilizes it. It's loving without begging, giving without expecting, and showing up without needing to control how it's received. The reason detachment feels hard is because it challenges your ego. The ego feeds on control. It wants to be right, to win, to possess. It needs constant proof of its importance. So when you let go, the ego feels like it's dying. But what's really dying is the illusion that you ever needed control in the first place. True power comes from surrender. Not surrender as in giving up, but surrender as in trusting that whatever happens, you can handle it. That's not weakness. That's courage in its purest form. Think about water. It flows around rocks, through cracks, over obstacles. It doesn't resist, it adapts. But it never loses itself. That's detachment. You move through life without becoming rigid, without fighting every turn. You learn to bend without breaking, to move without losing your shape. The detached mind doesn't need to force. It influences through calmness, through clarity, through presence. When you practice detachment, life becomes lighter. You stop trying to control every conversation, every impression, every outcome. You stop chasing people who aren't meant for you. You stop begging for doors that were never yours to open. Instead, you learn to let things unfold, to let people reveal themselves, to let timing take its course. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care wisely. You stop trying to carry the world on your shoulders and start walking alongside it instead. There's a moment that comes when you've done everything you can. And after that, only patience and faith remain. Detachment is what helps you wait, without losing yourself in the waiting. It's what lets you face disappointment without drowning in it. It's what keeps you steady when life doesn't follow your plan. You stop seeing uncertainty as a threat and start seeing it as space. Space for something better, something you couldn't have predicted. You also start noticing how much of your suffering was self-created, born not from what happened but from your resistance to it. Detachment dissolves that resistance. You begin to see that everything happens through you, not to you. Every ending clears space for a new beginning. Every failure redirects your path. Every loss teaches you how to love more wisely. When you're detached, pain still visits, but it doesn't stay because you don't cling to what was or what should have been. You live in what is. Detachment gives you back your power because it frees you from dependency on people, on outcomes, on the need for things to be a certain way. You stop chasing certainty and start trusting adaptability. You realize that strength isn't about control, it's about composure. The calmest person in the room is always the one in control because their peace is not negotiable. The world around you will always be uncertain. People will change. Plans will fail. Life will surprise you. But when you're detached, none of it can shake you. You've learned to hold everything with open hands. You give fully, but you're not afraid to lose. You hope deeply, but you're not crushed by disappointment. You live passionately, but you're not owned by desire. That balance is where real peace lives. Detachment doesn't make you emotionless. It makes you emotionally mature. You still care, still love, still dream, but you don't cling. You don't demand guarantees from life. You allow it to flow, and you trust your strength to move with it, because the goal was never to control everything. It was to learn that you didn't need to. And that's when the real freedom begins. When you finally let go, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've learned that holding on too tightly only breaks what you love. You stop fighting reality and start working with it. You stop forcing timing and start aligning with it. You stop living in fear of loss and start living in the presence of trust. That's detachment. Quiet strength, calm confidence, power without force. It's knowing that whatever comes, you'll face it, and whatever leaves, you'll survive it. Because peace doesn't come from control. It comes from the courage to let go. There comes a moment when the noise of the world fades just enough for you to hear something far more powerful. The sound of silence within you. It's not the absence of thought. It's not emptiness. It's a deep, steady stillness that exists beneath all the chaos, the chatter, the expectations. That stillness is your anchor, your truth, your power. It's where wisdom replaces worry and peace replaces panic. Most people never reach it because they are too busy chasing control, approval, and noise. But if you can learn to be still, not just in body but in mind, you access a strength that nothing external can touch. Stillness is not something you find, it's something you remember. It's always been inside you, buried under layers of thought, fear, and noise. Every overreaction, every burst of anxiety, every mental storm pulls you away from it. Your mind convinces you that peace will come after you fix everything, after everyone likes you, after the future makes sense. But peace doesn't wait on conditions. It's not something to achieve. It's something to allow. It's there right now, beneath the clutter of your overthinking, waiting for you to stop running long enough to hear it. In a world that glorifies constant stimulation, scrolling, talking, reacting, stillness feels uncomfortable at first. The silence can be intimidating because for the first time you come face to face with yourself. There's nowhere to hide, no distraction to drown in. You meet your thoughts as they are, your fears as they appear. But that's the initiation, facing yourself without flinching. Because the moment you stop running from your thoughts is the moment they lose power over you. The mind is like a lake. When disturbed, it distorts every reflection. You can't see clearly when the water is churning, but when it's still, the surface becomes like glass and everything becomes visible. Truth, insight, clarity. Inner stillness isn't about turning off your thoughts, it's about quieting the storm so you can see through it. When you train your mind to be still, decisions become easier, reactions soften, and perspective sharpens. You stop being dragged by emotion and start being guided by awareness. But here's the thing. Stillness takes courage, because silence reveals truth. And truth isn't always comfortable. It shows you where you're forcing what's not meant for you, where your ego is driving your choices, where you've been pretending to be fine when you're not. Stillness strips away illusions. It's the mirror that doesn't lie. That's why people avoid it. They'd rather drown in distraction than face what silence might show them. Yet that very confrontation is the doorway to power. True power isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't demand attention. It moves with quiet certainty. When your mind is still, you become unshakable. Not because life stops testing you, but because you stop being ruled by every test. You respond instead of react. You observe instead of overanalyze. You see beyond emotion to truth. That's mastery. That's what the truly strong understand. Peace is not the absence of challenges. It's the ability to remain calm through them. The greatest warriors, leaders, and thinkers throughout history all shared one trait: an unbreakable stillness. They knew that the mind's noise is the enemy of clarity. In silence, they heard their instincts. In stillness, They found direction. They didn't let chaos around them create chaos within them, because they understood that when your inner world is calm, your outer world bends to it. Stillness also builds presence. Overthinking keeps you trapped in the past or worried about the future. But when you are still, you return to the present, the only place power truly exists. You can't change yesterday. You can't control tomorrow. But you can meet this moment with focus, grace, and strength. Inner stillness trains you to stop living in your head and start living in your awareness. And from awareness comes control. The right kind of control. Not over others or outcomes, but over yourself. Think of it like this. Noise is weakness disguised as movement. People think if they keep talking, doing, or thinking, they'll figure life out. But noise is avoidance. Stillness is strength, because stillness demands trust. Trust that the answers will come when they're meant to. Trust that you don't need to rush to be enough. Trust that what's meant for you won't miss you. When you can sit in silence and feel peace instead of panic, you've won a battle most never even realize they're fighting. Inner stillness also recharges your energy. Overthinking drains your life force. Every what if, every replayed conversation, every imagined scenario steals from your peace. It's mental clutter. Stillness is what clears that clutter. It's the reset button your mind desperately needs, but rarely gets. When you quiet your mind, even for a few moments, you realign with strength, with clarity, with purpose. You stop reacting out of exhaustion and start acting out of intention. There's also a sacred confidence that grows in silence. When you stop explaining yourself, stop defending, stop performing, you realize how little noise you actually need to feel worthy. The quieter you become, the louder your energy speaks. People start to feel your calm, your certainty, your groundedness. You no longer seek validation because your peace becomes your proof. That's what makes you magnetic. Stillness radiates strength in a way noise never can. But achieving stillness doesn't mean isolation. It's not about running away from life. It's about engaging with it from a deeper place. It means walking into chaos with a calm heart. It means hearing criticism without internalizing it. It means facing uncertainty without losing your center. You can still be ambitious, passionate, driven, but you do it from peace, not panic. That's the difference between those who burn out and those who shine. Inner stillness also connects you to intuition, that quiet, guiding voice that always knows what's right. The problem is, most people can't hear it because their mind is too loud. Intuition whispers. Fear shouts. When you learn to silence the shouting, you start hearing the truth. That's when you start making aligned choices, not fear-based ones. You stop chasing what looks good and start choosing what feels right. The journey to stillness is not a one-time event. It's a practice. Every day you'll be tempted by noise, notifications, opinions, doubts. But every time you return to your breath, to your body, to this moment, you reclaim power. You remind your mind who's in charge. You can find stillness anywhere in silence, before sunrise, in a pause before reacting, in the breath you take instead of the argument you start. Stillness isn't about the place, it's about the state. And when you live from that state, everything changes. You stop being a prisoner of thought. You stop being drained by what ifs. You stop being at war with yourself. You start to feel rooted, steady, even when life shakes. You begin to move through the world with grace, not force, because stillness gives birth to clarity, and clarity gives birth to power. In that stillness, you finally realize something profound. Peace was never outside of you. It was never waiting for the world to calm down, for people to change, or for life to go your way. It was always within you, quiet, patient, and ready. You just had to stop long enough to feel it. True power doesn't come from conquering others or controlling circumstances. It comes from mastering yourself, from finding that silent, unmovable place inside where nothing external can shake you. That is inner stillness. That is where true power lives. At some point, you stop searching for peace in things, people, and outcomes, and you start realizing it was never lost. It was simply buried under noise. You've spent years trying to control everything around you, what people think, how life unfolds, how the future looks. But the real battle was never outside. It was always within. The enemy was never the world. It was the uncontrolled mind. Silence your mind, and the world changes shape. Because everything you see is filtered through what you think and feel. When your mind is chaotic, even the calm feels like a threat. But when your mind is still, even the storm feels like peace. The power was never in controlling your environment. It was in mastering your inner one. That's the real strength. When you no longer need the world to behave a certain way for you to be okay. When you can walk into uncertainty without fear, face rejection without losing your worth, and let go without losing your center. You stop begging for control because you found something stronger: composure. You stop chasing noise because silence has become your superpower. There's a version of you on the other side of your overthinking. Clear, confident, calm. They don't need to prove or perform. They move with intention, not impulse. They don't react to everything. They respond with wisdom. They don't need to be understood. They understand themselves. That version of you isn't waiting for the perfect life. They're waiting for you to be still enough to hear them. You've fought wars in your head that never needed to be fought. You've battled ghosts made of fear, replayed moments that don't matter anymore, and lost sleep over futures that haven't happened yet. But the moment you choose silence, the war ends. Because peace doesn't come when life stops being hard. It comes when your mind stops making it harder. Stillness is not weakness. It's not passivity. It's the highest form of control, self-control. It's choosing not to be dragged by every thought, every emotion, every fear. It's walking through chaos and knowing it can't touch you unless you let it. That is mastery. That is freedom. So stop feeding the noise. Stop giving energy to what drains you. Every thought doesn't deserve your attention. Every emotion doesn't deserve your reaction. Every storm doesn't deserve your fear. Sit with yourself. Breathe. Listen. Let silence speak louder than doubt. Because the more you quiet your mind, the more clearly you'll hear your power whisper, "You are enough. You always were." In the end, peace isn't found in escape. It's found in presence. Strength isn't loud, it's silent. Control isn't force, it's calm. The world will keep spinning, people will keep talking, and chaos will keep existing. But your stillness, your awareness, your inner silence, that's your kingdom. Protect it. Live from it. And remember this, the most powerful person in any room is the one who doesn't need to speak to be felt, who doesn't need to react to prove strength, who doesn't need to control to command peace. That can be you. That is you once you silence your mind and let your true power rise.